Hi everyone, so in this tutorial I'm quickly going to be showing you how to run this animation you're seeing right on the screen. This is powerful, isn't it? And this is similar to the animation you would see on the Zomato app, where you have the restaurant card with animation, and then the image animation, and then with the pagination animation. And this is superb. I'm going to be showing you how you can achieve this using React Native, TypeScript, and then React Native reanimated. This is also for learning purposes. And then if you see quickly, I'm just going to show you around it. You can see that the restaurant card here, we have two images there, and then there's a slider, there's a banner slider, carousel like, and then we have the pagination there too, to show the currently active image. And then this is beautiful. So if I scroll up, you'll see what's going on. So you can see Pizza Hut is currently visible, and that's why the animation is working. And then you can see now Louis Burger is now visible, and then Pizza Hut, the animation for Pizza Hut is no longer working. It has stopped, and then it's only the second restaurant screen that has the animation working. This is powerful and superb. I'm going to be showing you how to do that. And so if I scroll, so you make it so you can see how visible, so you can see it. So for the visible restaurant, the animation will run only for the visible restaurant, and then the pagination dots also run for only the visible restaurant. And this is beautiful. So if I go back and make a Pizza Hut visible, so we make it more visible, so you can see the animation will come back, so it's more visible here, and you'll see, just watch out for this. This is beautiful, this is superb. So I'm going to be showing you how this is done. So if I go down now, and then it's going to activate the second restaurant, and then the first restaurant will stop animating. So look at this, this is beautiful. So if I go to the next restaurant as well, it will stop Louis Burger, and then Chicken Republic is now visible, and see what's happening. This is beautiful. So Chicken Republic, so exactly the way they did in Zomato app, so and other apps like that. So you'll learn how to achieve that using React Native, TypeScript, and then reanimated. Without wasting time, let's go get started with this, and we'll show you how everything is done. So we're going to get started with this now, and so this is our home screen. And to get started with the whole thing, I'm just going to show you some changes I've made based on number one. The first change I made was based on the updates. Update keeps happening in React Native. So based on the update, I've changed my settings. So I'm just quickly going to go to the backend and show you what changed. You go to the TS config there. So the TS config for the backend, let's open that. So come here, you see I've added this to it, because currently I'm using, let me show you, I'm using React 19 version, and then React Native 79.3 version, which is different from the initial version during this tutorial. So if you're getting this at this time, you'll have to upgrade your version. And then my expo is now expo 53, and for us to use all these, we need to also change our node. So our node server, our node.js, let me show you. So I'll just do node v. So currently you see we're using version 22. The node version we're using is node version 22. So since we're using expo 53, React Native 19, and we're using React Native 79.3, and then React 19. So it's recommending, or it's requesting, that I change my node version. So we couldn't use the previous node version that I was using, so I had to upgrade my node version to version 22.15. And then with this update, TypeScript is not supported out of the box. So if you run your backend, it will give you an error. You'll not be able to connect the backend. So this is my backend, it's connected now. So it would have given you an error. So if that error occurs, just go to your TS config and add this file. So change whatever you have in your TS config and add this, so it can accept TypeScript and then all the modules. So that's what's going on. Once you put this in it, and remember, it's a TS config for the back end, so you just add this to it, and then you run it, you start npm start, and your backend will work. So that's the first change I made to that. So the second one was my MongoDB server. So my MongoDB database. So I went to my restaurant, because we want to perform image carousel, a slider. So I added to my image URL, so I added another image. So we have two images in our array here. So you could find that. I'll add these two so you can have access to it. So added another image. So for all of the restaurant. So it has, you can see, it has array of 2 images. And as of the time I'm doing it, my IP address already changed as well. So I'm using this my current IP address. So, or if you are on iOS, this you won't need this IP address. You just use localhost. But I'm using a Windows computer, Windows PC. So that's why I have to use the IP address here. So, and it changes a lot. So it changes a lot. So if I take you through everything, so you see we have 2 images there. So that's all. That's all. So we can come back to the front end. So remove this tsconfig and the package.json, and also update your package.json for the front end. So if I show you the package.json from the front end, so it's also using Expo 53, React 19, and React Native 79.3 currently. So that's all the changes I made. It's just updates. So we can continue. So we'll come to our home screen. Our home screen is okay. So the first place we want to go to is the restaurant card. So we'll come into the restaurant card, and that's where we're going to start making our updates. So we can have we can render a dynamic restaurant card. So we're going to get started with this. We're going to start making changes to this so we can accommodate the updates we want to make. So the first thing I'll do here is we're going to put is focused, and its focus will be boolean. So its focused is boolean, and then we'll come inside here, and then we can add this focused. So add this focus here, and so we can continue, and then we'll come. So I'm just going to come here and say, let's just want to display some constants. So I'm going to just translate. Let's call it translate x. So I'm going to use shared value from reanimated, and then let's make it a type of number, and then the initial value will be 0. Then we also want to get a flat list, so let's call it a flat list ref. We're going to use a use ref from React. So we imported use ref from React, and then we'll pass the type shortly, and then it's going to be null. So the type will be flat list. So we'll get flat list from React Native, and the flat list will add it should be a string, because that's what we'll be using to display our images. That's the array of images. So after that, we want to quickly declare another constant. So I'm going to use active index, and then set active index, and this will use useState from React. It has been imported, and then the initial value will be 0. Then the next one I want to do is let's get current index. So current index will be we're going to use our shared value, use shared value will be 0. And then the last one here is we're going to get the interval. So the interval ref. So the interval ref will use ref, and then use ref. So we're going to pass the type to that as well. Then so we're going to use Node.js. So Node.js has been imported, and then we're going to use the timeout or null. And then we're going to use the initial value will be null. So the error is gone. So we're good to go. I can save this, and then we'll come to. So after this, I'm just going to paste some code here, and then I'll explain it. So we can come here and then let's import. I'll explain everything. So we have a use effect imported from React. So flat list here, I think we have typo error. So I'm going to change this. Cool. So everything is working fine now. So I'll quickly come here and then also add, we're gonna add const, there's a const animated. Let's call it animated style. So animated style, we're going to use animated style from reanimated. I need to take a callback function. So inside this, we're just going to get a transform, and then the transform is an array. Transform property is an array of object, and then inside the object, we're going to get a translate x. Translate x will now be equal to our translate x from above. Translate x dot value. So we're good to go. So we save this as well. Now quickly, I'll just add it up. Then I'll explain everything at once. So we'll come down to this place. So we need to change this whole code as well. We need to change it and make use of flat list. So we're going to be using flat list to display the array of images inside each restaurant card. So I'm just quickly going to do that, but don't worry, I'll explain everything that is happening here so you'll understand better. So let me just do this so that we can explain everything all at once. So I'm going to remove everything from here. So I'm going to remove the image, and we're going to use flat list instead here, and I'm going to change this to animated. So we're going to get animated from React. Is animated from React natively animated. It has been imported, so we can use animated.view here, and then we change this to animated.view. So we're good to go here. So we can open this. So we're good to go. So we'll just explain everything from here now. Then one more thing is on our animated. I'll bring this down. So here we're going to render an array of styles. So here we're going to pass the animated style. So we're good to go. We're passing this animated style there. So passing this animated style. So quickly, I'm just going to explain what's going on here. So let me minimize this a little for now. So I'm just going to quickly explain what we are doing here, what this use effect is doing this function. So we're using the use effect hook from React. So in our context, this use effect hook is used to manage an interval that auto scrolls a flat list. So, and the flat list is what we are going to be using to render the images for each of the restaurant card. So what we are saying now is, so for each of the restaurant components, and so we have the components here. So what we are saying is, we're saying, okay, inside the use effect hook, we want to check when the component is focused. So the component in this context, remember, is that's the restaurant card. So we have the restaurant card for Pizza Hut is a component, and then we have for Louis Burger, we have for Chicken Republic, and so on. So we want to get the one that is currently focused, the one that is currently viewable or visible. In our context right now, the one that is currently visible is the Pizza Hut component or restaurant card. So we are saying if is focused is equal to true when the component is focused. So we're going to set up what an interval. So the hook set up an interval using set interval that runs every 5 seconds. So because we specify 5 seconds here, so this hook is going to set up an interval with using what the set interval that runs every 5 seconds. So inside the callback of the set interval, this is the callback function. So inside this callback, we will calculate the next index. So within the interval callback, we will calculate the next index to scroll to by incrementing the current active index, which is this. We're going to increment it +1, and then once we by incrementing the current active index and taking the modulo of the total number of items. So in our situation, this is the total number of items. So the image URL dot length. So that's what we are doing. So we're going to be incrementing it. So we're going to be using the next index to scroll to the next index by incrementing the current active index and taking the modulus of the total number of items. So what we are doing here, so this ensures that the index wraps around to 0 when it reaches the end of the list. So what we are doing here, what modulus is doing here is, okay, if you check the item.image URL, we're using the item we got it from here. So this is the item we're using, and it's from our world restaurant item param. So we have an array of images there. We have two images inside our image URL as shown to you in our backend, in our MongoDB backend. So what we are doing, the modular, so the length here will be 2. So if we have 2, so let's say for example the active index is 0, and then 0, then it will be plus 1, because the active index, if you go and check it now, let me show you the active index. So if you come and check it here, you can see that the current active index is equal to 0. So that's the idea. So when this component is focused, it will come here, it will come into this place and say current active index plus 1. So it will increment it. So 0 plus 1 will be 1. Then the modular operator, this is how it works. So it will now be 1 divided by 2. So if you say 1 divided by 2, it's impossible. So it will be 0 remainder 1, because 1 cannot divide 2, cannot divide 1. So it's impossible. So we are looking at the remainder. So here it's saying it will remain what? 1. So if the remainder is 1, it will increment. So that's the idea. So it will go to the next index, because there's a remainder. So if 1 divided by 2 is not possible, it will be 0 remainder 1. It will increment. So it will go to the active index will be what? Plus 1 again, which will now scroll to the next index. So the next index now will now be what? The current one now is 1 plus 1. So the next index will be what? Equal to what? 2. So at that point, modulus operation will also come in again. So this place will now become what? 2 divided by 2, the total length of what? The image URL. So 2 divided by 2 will give us what? 1, and it will remain what? 0. So once it sees that there's a remainder of 0, that means it has come to the end. So that's the end of what? Of the length. That's the last index. That's the last length of what? The image URL that we're targeting. So at that point, it will now go back to what? It will now go back and what? Start. It will go and start the animation again. So that's what we're doing. So that's why it wraps around to 0 when it reaches the end of the list. So the current index will go back to 0 again. So that's the idea. So if it goes back to 0, then that means it will go and what? Start all over again. So it becomes 0 plus 1, and it's 1 divided by 2 is impossible. It's remainder 1. So if it remains 1, it will go to the next index. So it will now become, the active index now becomes what? 1. So 1 plus 1 will be 2 divided by 2. That is 1 remainder 0. So it has gone to 0, it wraps around 0, the active index goes back to 0 again. So it goes back and starts all over again. So that's the idea. I hope that explains it comprehensively. So after that, once we've done this, so we are using the scroll to the next index. So we are using the scroll to the next index from our flat list. So we use the scroll to index method of the flat list to scroll to the next index within the animation with animation. So what we are doing here is, if we come here, you see that we're using the flat list ref. So we pass flat list into that. So that's the idea. So inside our flat list ref, we're using use ref from React, and we pass the flat list to it. And so that's the idea. So that's why we're calling, when we call the flat list ref.current, so scroll to index rather. So it's a method inside flat list. So we are using this scroll to index method of the flat list to scroll to the next index with animation. So that's why we said what animated is true. So we're taking the index and we're scrolling toward next index. So we're passing the next index we have here. So that's the idea. The next index, we're passing it to our index. So that's what we use to scroll to the next index. And after that, we want to update the active index. So we update the active index. So that's what's happening here. So everything I've explained before. So that's just it. So we now have our set active index will now be next index. So it will now be the next index here. So when it was 0 plus 1, so the active index is now 1. It becomes 1. So divide by 2, it is impossible. So it will remainder 1. So the next, it will now set active index to this next index, which is 1, and then it will now use it to perform the same animation again. That is 1 plus 1, and it goes on like that. So it's going to update the set active index to next index, and also update the current index dot value to next index. So that's what we are doing there. So it updates the active index state and the current index value using set active index and current index dot value equal to next index respectively. So that's just what we're doing here. So after that, we now come, so when the component is not focused, so that is else. We have if. So we have if, so it's if and x. So if it's focused, if it's true, and else if it's not true. So if the component is not focused for all the components that are not currently focused, that is not focused. So what we're just going to do, we are going to clear their interval. So if an interval is currently running, so let's say for example Pizza Hut is currently running, and then I scroll from Pizza Hut to Louis Burger. So at that point, Pizza Hut is no longer focused. So but Pizza Hut was running. So if an interval is currently running, it clears intervals using what the clear interval to prevent unnecessary scrolling when the component is not visible anymore. So when the component is no longer visible, we are going to use what the clear interval what to clear that interval to prevent unnecessary scrolling, because it's not what is no longer running, it's no longer active. So you're going to see everything practically very shortly. So we can move to the next one. So the next one is a return. So we're not going to use the return. So when the component on mount, so that's what we are doing here. So when the component on mount, we are going to use the return, this clear interval to what, to clean up. So the hook returns a cleanup function that clears the interval when the component on mount to prevent memory leaks. So that's what we're using this for. So it's going to clean it up. So when the component on mount, so and then we pass the dependencies to it. So we have the is focus, the item.image URL.length, and the active index. So these are the dependencies. So that's what triggers this use effect to rerun. So if its focus is true, the effect reruns when the focus state changes. You get, so item.url.length, the effect also reruns when the number of items changes, and then the third one is active index. So the effect also reruns when the active index what changes. So this is the idea. So in summary, so by managing the interval based on the focus state and cleaning up when the component on mount, this use effect hook ensures efficient and controlled auto scrolling behavior in the flat list. So that's the essence. So we can move forward. So very shortly, you're going to see how everything works out. So we can come to the flat list. So this is the flat list that we're using here, and see we have passed what the flat list ref into that, and then the data we're using the image item.image URL, and then it's horizontal paging enabled. So inside our render item, so you can see this is where we now actually render what the images. So we're now picking what, so we can see we're getting the item, and then we're getting what we're using the item. So the item will be the image URL. So that's what we're passing here. So we render the image URL. So the next one we want to talk about is the on momentum scroll end. So on momentum scroll end, so what we are actually using on momentum scroll end event handler for, this event handler is used to update the active index state and current index value when the user scrolls through a flat list or scroll view. You can also use it in when we're doing scroll view. So this is what is happening. So the first thing we want to calculating here is the new index. So just like the way we did earlier, so when the scrolling momentum ends, so that's what we're doing. So when the scrolling momentum ends, it calculates the new index based on the content offset and screen width. So that's the idea. So here we're using the event.native event. So event is what event.native event does content offset, and then we're getting the X because we are scrolling horizontally. So that's why we're using X. So it gives the current horizontal offset of the content. So that's what we're doing here. Then the screen width is the width of the screen. Remember, I showed you the screen width where we got it from our constant. So we're now using the mat.round function. So we're calculating these using the mat.round. So what we're doing here is we are saying it calculates the index of the currently visible item by dividing the offset by the screen width and rounding them to the nearest integer. So we're making sure that it's not in decimal, so it's rounded up to as a whole number. So that's what we're just doing. That's what the round that's why we're using the round here. So it will round them up, it will round it to the nearest integer. So here, so we can calculate what the index of the currently visible item. So we can calculate it by what dividing what the offset by the screen width. So the offsets as content offset.x. So that's just what is happening. So after that, we also update what the active index. So it will update the active index state using the set in active index, and it will be equal to what the new index to reflect the currently visible item. And then we do the same for the current index value. It also updates the current index value using current index.value, and then equal to what new index to keep it in sync. So to keep it in sync with the active index state. So this is just what we are doing. So by updating the active index and the current index value when the scrolling momentum ends, this event handler ensures that the app accurately tracks the currently visible item in the list. So, and then overall, the event handler provides a smooth and responsive user experience by accurately tracking the user scrolling interactions. So that's what we are using all this for. So without wasting time, so let's go and get into it and let's get this animation working. So I'm going to save this. So the next thing we're going to do is go to our restaurant. So this is the restaurant card. So we're going to go to our restaurant screen, our restaurant section. So inside our restaurant section, let's go to our restaurant section. You can see it's already throwing an error there. So before we do that, we're just going to come here, and then we're going to get the state. So we're going to use const. So let's use const. Let's say focused ID. So we want to get const, so it's going to be, we're going to use state there. So let's import state and then state. and then initial value we're going to make it null, and then we're going to pass, let's pass string or null. So the initial state will be null. So we're going to use focused id, and then set focused id. So we'll come to our restaurant card, and inside our restaurant card I'm going to get the focus. So we want to get this focus, so if it's, so it will be equal to, so its focus will be equal to, so we're going to use item.id. so we're going to compare it with the focus id. So what we're doing here is focus will return true if the item id, that's the item id is the id of the restaurant card of the restaurant. So if the id of the restaurant is equal to what the focused id, so if we find a match, it will return true, and then we can perform the animation on that restaurant card who has its id equal to focused id, whereas the remaining restaurant ID, card will be false, will become false automatically, and then the animation will not run. Remember, its focus is a boolean that indicates whether the current restaurant card is focused or not. So the focus is determined by comparing the id of the item object with the focused id. So we'll come here, and then we're going to say, I'm going to say const on view. So let's say const on view ref. So const on view ref, and then const on view ref will be, let's say use ref. Let's get use ref from React. So use ref from React, and inside that we're going to pass. So we're going to get, I'm just going to write this so that I will not make mistakes. So we're going to get the viewable item. So viewable items, and so it's usually done this way. Viewable item will be, so we're going to get the viewable item. Okay, I see the reason why it's not bringing it up, so let me just avoid that first, and we can come back to this. So we should have it. So viewable items will be equal to, so let's get our view. We're supposed to get our view token from React Native. Oh, I think I know where the error is coming from. So let's take all this out. The error is coming from here, so it's supposed to be, we're supposed to do it this way. Yep, so it's okay now, it's working well now. So we're going to have our viewable items. So the viewable items is going to be, we're going to use the view token. Yes, good. It's bringing it from React Native. You can see it has imported that. So, and it's going to be an array. So inside the viewable token, we can come inside this, inside the callback. So inside the callback, we're going to say if viewable items dot length. So since it's an array, if it's greater than 0, then so we're going to set focused id. Focused id will be viewable items, and then we're going to get first one, and then we're going to use the item.id. So I'm just quickly going to explain this. So we're using the viewable item callback. So this is a callback function. See from here, shows the callback function. So inside that, we are saying this function takes an object with a viewable items property, which is an array of what view token object from React Native. This object represents the items that are currently visible on the screen. So it represents all the items that are currently visible on the screen. So what we're now doing, we now want to update the focus ID. So to update the focus ID, we are saying if they are viewable items. So that's what we're saying here. So if viewable items or length is greater than 0, that means they are viewable items on the screen. So we're saying if they are viewable items, then the function update the focus ID state by calling set focus ID with the ID of the first viewable item. So we are getting the ID of the first viewable items. So you can see that we have on our screen now, we have viewable items. So if we check it now, so the first one on the ID of the first viewable item, so will be, in this case now, the ID of the first viewable item is Pizza Hut. We are going to determine at what point do we consider an item visible to. So we'll pass into our flat list. So just get the idea. So we now want to get, because there are viewable items on our screen now, you can see. So we want to get the ID of the first. So we want to get the ID of the first viewable item, and then we'll pass it into our focus our focused ID. So in a situation whereby the focused ID and then the item.id matches, then we want to perform our what? We want to turn the is focus to true for that restaurant card. So that's the idea. So without wasting time, I'll just go to, you understand everything shortly now. Everything is about to unfold. So I'll just go to our flat list down here. So inside our flat list, what I'm just going to do now is we're going to pass the unviewable item changed. So that we can get, so we're going to say unviewable item changed. So inside our unviewable item change, we're going to use unviewRef, and then we'll get the current. So we'll get the current, so we use the current, and then we want to pass the viewability config. So that's at which point do we consider an item to be visible. So that's what we use the viewability config for. So inside the viewability config, we're going to get the view area coverage percentage threshold. So let's, in our case, let's say 70. So at 70, we want to consider an item to be what? Visible. And you can see this thing is already changing. Now you can see this is beautiful. You can see it's working automatically, and you can see this is beautiful, and you can see our modular operator is also working. Immediately I saved, you can see everything working perfectly fine, and you can see Pizza Hut is already animating. So because that's what is currently visible, that's the viewable item, that's what is considered currently visible. So you can see it's working perfectly well. And then if I scroll this, you'll see that it's the only one working. So Pizza Hut is still visible, and you can see it's only Pizza Hut that is working. This is cool, this is beautiful. So if I scroll now, let's make the next restaurant card visible, and you see what will happen. So if I scroll this up, and let's make, so I'm not going to take Pizza Hut completely out, so you can see this is beautiful. So Louis Burger is now currently visible, and you see the animation for Pizza Hut has stopped, and then the animation for Louis Burger has taken over. So that's the idea. So that's the idea of all what I've been explaining since. And then clearing the interval, so it has paused the Pizza Hut, the interval is cleared because it's no longer currently focused. So we don't consider it focused. So Louis Burger is the focused restaurant card, and you can see the animation is already working on it. So if I keep scrolling, let's make the next. So let's say, so you can see Chicken Republic is now animating, and then Louis Burger has stopped. It has paused, it has stopped because it's no longer considered viewable anymore. So this is beautiful. So without wasting time, I'm just going to continue. The next thing we want to do is we want to add the pagination animation to this. We want to the pagination dot animation. We want to add it to this. So I uploaded a tutorial not quite long on the laundry app. So I made extensive explanation of how this pagination works. So I'm not going to be going through all that here. So you can just check that for the extensive explanation of how it works. I'm just going to quickly implement this here so that we can move on. I'll be fast as possible so that we can move on. I'll try and explain a little too. So if I come here, I'm going to bring up my pagination. Let's go to our component. So I've added it here. So I have the dot, and then I have the pagination dot. So these are the two things we're going to be working on right now. So in our restaurant card, so inside our restaurant card, I'm going to bring it. I'll be bringing in the pagination dot. So quickly, let me run you through the pagination dot. So let's minimize this. We'll come back to it. So we have the pagination dot. It has props. We're declaring the types there. So we have image count and then active index. So the image count is number and active index is what number. So we have the pagination dot, and then we are using pagination dot, and then we are passing. Let me bring this down. So we're passing the pagination dot props from here. We're passing into the image. So we're passing into our pagination dot, and then we have the image count and then the active index. So if you like, you can also do it this way. Okay, for consistency. So I'd usually do it this way, and then we can have our pagination props. It will still work. Everything is working fine. So let me leave it this way. So we have our pagination dots and we're passing in. So inside here, so we're using the array.from. So I'm going to be showing you what that is doing so shortly, but before we do that, we are passing our dot. So we're passing our dot into our pagination dot. So, and then if we come to our dot here as well, so inside our dot, we have the props, and then we have so let me just change this to, so whichever way you do it, this is also acceptable. So but for consistency, so my followers, my people are all must be used to me doing it this way. So let's maintain that for everyone. Thank you. So we can save this to the same to give you the same output. So we have the pagination, we have the dot here, and then we're using the animated width, and then we're using the shared value from React React Native reanimated. So we're using shared value from there, and then the initial value we passed 0. So we're using the use effect here. So I've also made extensive explanation of this, but however, I'm going to try as much as possible to run you through the explanation one more time. So on the restaurant card, we want to check and first compare the active index with what the dot index. So if the two are the same, then this use effect hook will run. So and then what we are doing there is we are passing what our animated width dot value, so that we can do the dot pagination animation, so we can animate the pagination, so like a progress bar. So we are going to be using with repeat from reanimated as well. So with this repeat, we are passing what inside it, we are passing with timing, and then we are changing it from 0 to what 1. So the animated width, the animated width is currently 0, so it will change to 1, and when it's 1, we are going to use the duration for 5 seconds, and then the reduced motion. So reduced motion don't never, because the way reanimated works, React Native works, most of these reanimation are deactivated primarily automatically in some devices. So if you don't have your reduced motion set to never, this animation may not work on your device. So if you find that it's not working on your device, because it's a real device, if you're using simulator, it may work, but in real device, so you may need to set this so that it can override the primary settings to allow animation. There's nothing wrong with it, just to allow reanimated animation to run primarily. So we set this to what never, so that the animation can run. So what we are doing here is, with a timing function, create a timing animation that animates animated with value from its current value to 1 over a duration of 5 seconds. So the reduce motion option is set to reduce motion dot never, which means that the animation will always run at full speed. So that's what allows the animation to run on any device, on any physical device. So we are allowing the animation to run at full speed. So with repeat here now, this function repeats the animation a certain number of times. So in this case, the animation is repeated 1 time. So that's why we specify it here. So we are telling it to repeat once. So it will repeat the animation once and not infinitely. So when the animation finishes, we want to use the animated.value is reset is 0. So we reset the animated.value to 0 when the animation finishes. So that's why we're using this callback function to reset it to 0, so it will start over again. So and then we're now saying if active index is not equal to dot index. So if the active index is not equal to dot index, that means the else of the if. So else, if this is not equal, just return the animation towards 0. So after that, we can now come here and then use animated style. So use animated style from React Native reanimated. So we are using these to create the animated style for our progress bar for the width. So what we are doing here is we're saying the width, we want to set the width to the value of the value. So in our case, when the active index is equal to dot index, is to change to 1. So that means this will be 1 multiplied by 100, and then we're adding this percentage as a string. So 1 multiplied by 100 will be 100, and then we're adding the percentage, so it becomes 100%. So that's the idea. But if this is 0, it will be 0 multiplied by 100, and it's 0%. So that way it helps us to scale from 0% to 100%. So that's the idea. So that's what we're doing here. So we now come here and we're saying container width. So if the active index is equal to dot index, we are going to use the width will be 30. So it will be 30. It will be 30 long, and if it's not, it will be 5. So you will see everything shortly. So, and we now come into the animated progress bar. So the progress bar it's gonna have a container, and so inside the container we are passing the width to container width. So the width will be the container width. So for the animation for the current index, for the current image, the width will be 30, and the other one, we are rendering 2 images each on this restaurant card. So for the image that is currently active on the restaurant card whose animation is working, so for the image that is currently active, it will have a width of 30, so that the progress animation can work in it. It will fill it from 0 to 100%, and then for the other one that is not currently active, it will have a width of 5. So that's what we're just doing here. So that's why we're wrapping the container with that width. So and then we're now passing the animated.view to do the filling. So animated style. So the style is already the style sheet I provided here. So you see so width 100%, height 100%. So you just see everything how it's going. So we come here and we are overriding the width. So here the animated style will be this. So the animated style, this is it. So we're going to use the animated.value. So when it's equal to 1, it will be 1 times 1 multiplied by 100, and then that is 100, and then a percent. So make it 100%. So it will run from 0% to 100%. within the duration. So the duration is 5 seconds. So within 5 seconds, it will run the progress bar from 0% to 100%. So you see how everything unfolds shortly. So we can save this, and then we come back to our pagination inside here. So we imported what the dot. So we imported the dot, and then we pass the key. So we're using the key, which is what index from our map, and then the active index. So the active index will be equal to what? The active index here. So and then the dot index will be equal to what? The index here as well. So the I here will be equal to the dot index, and then the active index will be equal to the active index. So if they are the same, then it will run the progress bar animation for that image. So quickly, I'm going to explain the array.from. It's very important. So array.from is a JavaScript method that creates a new array from an iterable or an array-like object. So it is very important that we use this array.from for this to work in this context, because too many animations are going on. So array.from is the suitable way to get this done. Believe me, it is. I don't know if you have another way, you can drop in the comment section, but this is the most suitable way right now without any glitch. So the array.from is used to create an array of a specified length. So the specified length is now what? The image count. So we use it to generate pagination dot. So the length will be equal to what? Image count. So the image count creates an object with a length property. So an array.from now convert this object into an array with image count number of empty slots. So we now use the map function to iterate over the array, rendering a dot for each index. So it will now, once we map over it, it will render what? The dot for what? This index. So this approach allows for dynamic generation of pagination dot based on image count prop. So without wasting time, we'll just go on. I'll save this and show you how everything is going to work out. So we come to our restaurant card. Inside our restaurant card, we now will import and render the pagination dot. So we can come after our flat list here. So after our flat list, we can come here and then let's render a view. And inside this view, let's import our pagination dot. So let's import pagination dot, and then let's pass the props into it. So we're going to have the image count. So the image count is going to be the image. So image URL. Then we're going to get the length. So let's just use the length. So that will be for the image count. So and then we're going to get the active index. Active index will be the current. Let's use the current index dot value. So you see we're good to go. And then if we save it, let me enlarge this. So if we save it and everything work out, we should have our animation dots. So the currently visible is Chicken Republic, so just watch out for that. So if I save this, beautiful, and you can see this is beautiful, right? So you can see this is beautiful, and you can see the animation is working for Chicken Republic, and you can see it goes to the next one and it's currently visible. And then you can see for our Louis Burger, the animation is also paused. This is perfectly working fine, isn't it? So if I scroll back to our Louis Burger, let's scroll back to Louis Burger. So you can see the animation start working for Louis Burger as well. This is beautiful. So if I let's switch to Pizza Hut. So you can see the animation is working for Pizza Hut already. So let me scroll to the next one. You'll see what happens. You see it has stopped the animation for Pizza Hut, and the one for Louis Burger is working, because Louis Burger is what is currently viewable, considered visible. So this is working perfectly fine. So another thing we can try here is inside our pagination dot, let's try to use the active index instead. So beautiful, everything is still working fine. So we'll come to our Pizza Hut. So everything is working out fine. So you can see everything is working out fine. So I think we're good to go with this. So just to add this to your learning and for reference. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to, let's say you do an on press on the Pizza Hut restaurant. So you see it takes us to what the details, the rest, the screen for what the Pizza Hut restaurant. So the next thing I'm going to do, they also did it on Zoom in Zomato app, so you can check that out. We're going to be rendering a dynamic header with scroll based title animation. What's saying, as you can see, if you can see my screen now, you can see that we have recommended for you currently visible. So when the user scroll on this screen, so we want the recommended for you to change to the currently visible menu. So currently the currently visible menu is veg pizza. So actually that recommended for you is supposed to be veg pizza instead of recommended for you. So when I scroll on that and I scroll, because we are still in veg pizza, it will stay, the recommended for you should be veg pizza. And then when you scroll at this point, it should change to newly launched, because newly launched is the currently viewable or visible menu on the list. So it will change, and then Margarita Pizza. So I'm going to show you how to do that, how they did that, and it will change and it will animate and change the title. So watch out for that. I'll be dropping that. Thank you very much. If you're not subscribed, all these things, everything, you'll get it in the link below the tutorial. I've also updated the Zomato clone, so please get it, support in which way, so that I can bring more tutorials to you. Thanks for everyone that also been assisting. Thanks for your like, thanks for the support. I got over 140 likes on the Zomato app clone. Please keep it up. Just encourage, help push and make this video go viral. Please, I will really appreciate it. Thanks for those who have subscribed. I've had a lot of people who have subscribed. Please help push to 1,000. I'm really begging you, please. So don't just watch the video, just check the video. Please help push to 1,000, and I will really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one, so watch out for this, and I'll be dropping it very shortly. Thank you.